Did you honestly think you could marry into our family? Did you think you were our equal, the family of a successful hotel chain? Her words were cold and sharp. The chapel, which had fallen silent, echoed with her words. All the guests and staff turned to look at us. Today was supposed to be my granddaughter Ashley's wedding, but the groom, Jonathan, was nowhere to be found, and we couldn't reach him. We were at a loss when Fiona, Jonathan's mother, called Ashley's phone. Your assumptions are quite laughable. A girl of your background, with no parents, no less. Did you really think a girl with your upbringing could become the wife of my dear Jonathan? I snatched the smartphone from Ashley's hands. Mrs. Miller, you take those words back. Have some decency and stop insulting my granddaughter. But Fiona's scornful laughter didn't stop. Take back my words? No, I should be thanked. Today your little dream ends. Her words pierced my heart. Ashley covered her face and sobbed. As I silently fumed, I felt a significant shift within me. I gently patted Ashley's back and exchanged a knowing glance with my eldest son, William. William, I'm leaving the rest to you, but I won't let them hurt Ashley any further. William nodded with determination at my words. The data displayed on the screen of his smartphone suggested that this was a major stepping stone to cornering Fiona and her family. My name is Susan. I'm the founder of Smithtown Clothiers. It all began over 50 years ago when I started a small clothing store with my husband, Robert. At first, we tailored clothes for the local housewives, but with Robert's support and our hard work, our clientele gradually grew, and we expanded the store. Robert always supported me with a gentle smile. He would say, "No one can make clothes like you, Susan." His words were my driving force. But he fell ill at a young age and passed away, leaving me and our children behind. Even now I remember those days when I had no time to mourn and worked tirelessly. I had to keep going, to protect my family. With that thought, I single-handedly managed the store and, with the help of trusted employees, grew the business. I'm known in town for my strong will, but I was just desperate. But my family knows I have a softer side, especially with my granddaughter Ashley. They often tease me, saying, "Grandma, you're too spot on her." But Robert's teachings are always alive in my heart. Always put family first. That's my motto. Ashley came to live with me when she was just 7. My second son and his wife died in a sudden accident, and Ashley was left in shock, unable to speak. I remember holding her close and whispering, "It's okay, Grandma's here, always," over and over again. The grief of losing her parents weighed heavily on her. Ashley closed herself off for a while, but she gradually started to smile again. It was around the time she started innocently enjoying the meals I cooked, saying they were delicious. I can't express how much her words, "I feel safe with you, Grandma," meant to me. As she grew, Ashley became a bright girl who could express her feelings honestly. In middle school, she joined the tennis club, and I fondly remember her excitedly saying, "Watch me, Grandma," whenever she had a match. In high school, she chose her own path, and she continued to study diligently in college. She must have faced many hardships growing up without parents, but she never showed it. Instead, she often told me, "I'm so happy you raised me, Grandma." So, when she chose a partner, I genuinely wanted to support her. But now, seeing her tears, I'm reminded of how much I want to protect her. I can't forgive anyone who tries to take away her happiness. William is my eldest son and a reliable right-hand man who supports the family business, Smithtown Clothiers. Even now, at 45, he remains calm, collected, and methodical. From a young age, William was serious and hardworking. He studied business administration in college, and after graduating, he gained experience at a major trading company in a different city. Later, after much persuasion from me, he returned to take over the family business. With William here, my burden has significantly lessened. From negotiating with clients to managing employees and even launching new ventures, he handles everything meticulously. He's also highly trusted to our employees, who affectionately call him Young Master. William's caring nature towards our family is another one of his charms. He's been like a father figure to Ashley, always listening to her concerns and gently encouraging her. But behind that kindness lies a sharp mind and a readiness to act. In times of crisis, he calmly assesses the situation and acts swiftly. Even during the wedding preparations, William seemed to sense something and had been quietly investigating. "Leave it to me, Mom." There are no words that can express my relief and trust in him more than that. William always gives his all to protect his family. When Ashley's wedding was decided, the whole family was overjoyed and threw themselves into the preparations. The pure white wedding dress Ashley chose accentuated her radiant beauty, and as I watched her try it on, tears welled up in my eyes. "You look beautiful, Ashley." "Thank you, Grandma. Hearing you say that makes me so happy." Ashley blushed, her smile as lovely as ever. William, like a dependable older brother, took the initiative to make arrangements and preparations. Let's make this the best wedding ever, so Ashley can be all smiles. The whole family wished for Ashley's happiness and made thorough preparations. That's why none of us could have imagined that this day of celebration would turn into a tragedy. The music that was supposed to signal the start of the ceremony never played, and time just kept passing. The guests began to murmur anxiously, and the venue staff looked troubled as they went back and forth near the reception area. The groom's side of the aisle remained empty. Ashley came out of the waiting room and stood frozen at the entrance of the chapel. Her face was pale, and she occasionally glanced at the staff with a worried look. I felt a tightening in my chest. We can't seem to reach the groom's side. Would you mind waiting just a little longer? Ashley's voice trembled as she asked. Jonathan is really coming, isn't he? But the staff member just looked down, troubled. The fact that no one could confidently say, yes, he's coming, made the unsettling atmosphere in the venue even heavier. Ashley started to tremble slightly. Suddenly, Ashley's smartphone rang. The moment she saw the name Fiona Miller displayed on the screen, her expression froze. Hesitantly, with trembling hands, she answered the call. Her voice was weak. Mrs. Miller, is something wrong? The call was on speaker mode, and Fiona's cold, mocking voice echoed through the phone. Oh, Ashley, did you really think you could marry into our family? Did you think you were on our level, with our successful hotel and all? Your delusion is quite something. Her words reverberated through the entire venue, causing a stir among the guests. Ashley stood frozen, her face pale, and gradually her shoulders began to shake. A girl from a broken home with no parents marrying my Jonathan. It's simply not done. You need a reality check. Ashley's voice was barely a whisper as tears welled up in her eyes. Fiona's words continued relentless. A low-class girl like you could never be a CEO's wife. We, on the other hand, carry the pride of a distinguished family. I pulled Ashley close, supporting her trembling body as I took the smartphone. Fiona's scornful laughter echoed again, but in my heart, anger and determination quietly burned. The venue staff tried to contact the groom, Jonathan, but his phone remained unanswered. Hearing this, Ashley asked in a trembling voice, Jonathan, he is coming, right? However, the staff member just shook his head apologetically. We haven't received a response from him at the moment. At that moment, Ashley's face turned pale and her gaze wandered aimlessly. It was evident that Jonathan, following his mother's instructions, had chosen not to attend the wedding. He lacked the courage to face Ashley directly, leaving everything to his mother while he simply observed the situation from home. Jonathan canceled the wedding, thinking it was the natural decision. That marrying Ashley was a mistake from the start. From across the phone, Fiona's voice could be heard, but Jonathan didn't try to stop her. Instead, he justified his actions, thinking that it couldn't be helped since his mother had decided so. By not showing up, he was trying to escape responsibility. A surge of anger welled up from deep within me at his betrayal of Ashley's trust. I couldn't even fathom entrusting Ashley to this man anymore. As Fiona's insulting words echoed through their phone, the venue was filled with a heavy atmosphere. The guests in attendance could only watch from a distance, their eyes filled with concern for Ashley but unable to utter a word. The staff moved around with apologetic expressions, looking troubled and wondering if there was anything they could do. But no one could change the situation. Ashley stood alone in the center of the chapel, tears streaming down her face. Her figure was heartbreaking, as if she were completely cut off from her surroundings. I gently placed my hand on her shoulder and spoke with strength. Ashley, Grandma's here. You're not alone. Ashley nodded slightly at my words, but her tears wouldn't stop, and a deep sense of lonely sorrow seemed to emanate from her. I placed my hand on Ashley's trembling back, who continued to cry. Fiona's scornful laughter echoed through the phone from across the room. I couldn't let my granddaughter suffer any longer. Ashley, don't worry. Grandma will protect you from all this. The moment I spoke those words, a strong resolve formed in my heart. Those who had hurt my granddaughter would have to pay the price. I could feel the quiet awakening of my entrepreneurial spirit and wisdom long dormant within me. When Fiona's call ended, silence descended upon the chapel. A heavy atmosphere hung in the air. Supporting Ashley, who was still crying, I looked up at William's face. He maintained a calm expression and took out his smartphone from his pocket. Mom, I've been looking into Mrs. Miller for a while now. Looking into her? William showed me the screen as he spoke in a composed manner. The screen displayed detailed data about the inn that Fiona managed. That inn has accumulated significant debt in recent years. The number of guests has been declining, and it seems like getting loans from banks is becoming difficult. Furthermore, there are rumors among the employees about Mrs. Miller's poor management. They were in that kind of situation? Mom, when Jonathan first introduced Ashley, something felt off. I heard that Mrs. Miller was someone who strongly believed in social climbing, so I thought it would be best to investigate. William's gaze turned to Ashley. His eyes held a gentle fatherly affection for her, along with a calm sense of judgment. But to think they would ruin the wedding in such a way, I can't forgive that. Indeed, they have hurt Ashley deeply. They will face the consequences. William quietly nodded and continued. For now, Mrs. Miller's Inn is doing business with Mom's store, but this connection can easily be severed. If we use Mom's network, I think we can make an even more effective move. Understood, William. Let's plan things out calmly first. At this moment, I deeply felt the importance of the investigation that William had been working on beforehand, and to break through this situation, I made a firm decision to stand up, united as a family. After having Ashley rest in the waiting room for a while, William and I moved to a corner of the venue to discuss our future course of action. William, with his smartphone in hand, explained the details of his investigation to me one by one. First, about Mrs. Miller's Inn. It's true that their revenue has been declining. One of the reasons is the complaints from guests. Word is spreading through online reviews that the quality of service has deteriorated. Online reviews, you say? If that spreads, their reputation will plummet. That's not all. Their loans from the bank are also in arrears. From what I've gathered, there's a high possibility they won't be able to repay by the deadline. William was calm, but his words hinted at the anger he felt towards Fiona. I too felt that same anger burning within me as I considered our next move. Our store, Smithtown Clothiers, provides clothing and apparel to Mrs. Miller's Inn, doesn't it? We can use that to our advantage. Let's consider stopping our business with them. But we need to proceed cautiously, as it could have a significant impact on others as well. Right. I'll contact our business partners directly and explain the situation. If we use our local connections, we can also restrict Mrs. Miller's movements. As I listened to William's plan, I began to formulate more concrete ideas of my own. If there are complaints from the employees of Fiona's Inn, we can find a way to make their voices heard. And we should also point out the problems with Fiona's management style. We need to make it clear how much her inn is negatively impacting the community. Yes, first we'll gather the employees' voices. If we can use that as evidence, we can bring down the inn's reputation in one fell swoop. It's our duty to make them take responsibility for hurting Ashley this way. This is unforgivable. We won't let them get away with it. I understand, Mom. Leave the planning to me. I'll make sure it's a success. I could feel a bond of trust beyond words forming between us. To corner Fiona and her family and to protect Ashley, William and I were ready to take a new step forward. After we finished our strategy meeting, we immediately started to take action. William, maintaining his composure, began contacting relevant parties using his smartphone. First, we initiated the process to temporarily suspend business between Smithtown, Clothiers, and Fiona's Inn. We had sufficient grounds for this action. The inn's declining service and unethical management practices. William displayed a list of apparel and decorative items provided to the inn on his screen and explained the specific countermeasures. The list also included several unpaid invoices. With these outstanding payments, we have legal grounds to suspend business. We'll share this with our business partners and ask for their support in our actions. Right. Let's explain the situation thoroughly to our trusted partners and ask for their cooperation. If we're half-hearted here, it might backfire and create distrust. Of course. Not only will I contact them, but if you could also say a few words, Mom, it would add more weight. I nodded in agreement with William's suggestion, reflecting on the trusting relationships we have built with our business partners over many years. Many clients valued the quality of our clothing store and our sincere approach to business. That's why I was confident that our actions would gain their support. Furthermore, William had his eye on other businesses that dealt with Fiona's Inn. I also have a list of businesses that rely on Mrs. Miller's Inn. I'll reach out to them as well. If they also have doubts about Mrs. Miller's management, we might be able to work together. That's a good idea. We should convey through our business partners just how much trouble Fiona's Inn is causing the entire community. William immediately sprang into action, starting to call the contacts at our business partners. Meanwhile, I gathered the documents related to our dealings with the inn and asked our employees for their cooperation. Within a few hours, our efforts gradually began to take shape. This completes our preparations. In the next phase, we'll send a notice to officially suspend business, and we'll see just how cornered Mrs. Miller will become. His words contained both anger for the harm inflicted on our family and a calm determination. I trusted William, and I was certain that this course of action would be the first step in saving Ashley. Ashley sat in the waiting room, hunched over and trembling slightly. Her fingers tightly gripped the hem of her wedding dress, and her eyes were filled with unstoppable tears. Ashley, it's going to be okay. You don't need to lose to people like them. Saying this, I sat down next to Ashley and gently placed my hand on her shoulder. Ashley looked up, but her eyes were filled with anxiety and sadness. Grandma, why did this have to happen? I trusted Jonathan. Her voice was hoarse, and tears streamed down her cheeks. I felt a painful tightening in my chest. Ashley, you did nothing wrong. They're the ones who forgot their place and acted selfishly. We'll protect you, so don't worry. William crouched in front of Ashley and spoke in a quiet but firm voice. Ashley listened to his words and gently placed her trembling hand on her lap. But to have my wedding ruined like this, what should I do? It's all right, Ashley. Your life is still long ahead of you. You won't let today be just a day of sadness. We'll do everything we can. So all you need to do is find your smile again. Ashley remained silent for a while after my words, but eventually nodded slightly. We'll never abandon you. No matter what, we're on your side. Don't forget that. More tears fell from Ashley's eyes, but this time they seemed to contain a glimmer of relief. I gently squeezed her hand, and in my heart I renewed my vow to protect her with the strength of our entire family. When William returned home, he immediately spread out the documents and began reviewing the evidence against Fiona's inn. His expression was calm as usual, but the occasional tightening of his lips betrayed the anger he held within. The inn's reputation started to decline around the time the employee management became lax. There are rumors of long working hours and unpaid wages. He continued, compiling information scattered across the internet while facing his computer. Many reviews posted by guests complained about the poor customer service and the dilapidated state of the facilities. It's not just online reviews. The inn is also behind on payments to its suppliers. Some suppliers haven't been paid in months. I handed him the transaction records for Smithtown Clothiers. They detailed the rental history of the apparel provided to Fiona's inn and the outstanding invoices. Look at this. They've been late on payments to us several times, and their reasons were always vague. Indeed, considering these records, we should probably consider taking legal action. He had also organized information he had gathered from acquaintances working at Fiona's inn. Some employees felt they had been treated unfairly and had already quit. With this much information, we can show suppliers and the media how precarious the inn's financial situation really is. If we make a move, we can demonstrate to society how unjust their actions have been. We can't let them hurt Ashley any further. Right. William organized the documents and continued, holding his smartphone. Based on this, I'll contact our business partners. Then I'll provide the information to trusted local media outlets. Everything we do is for Ashley. I nodded at his words, convinced that William's careful preparations were the first step in protecting Ashley. With William's preparations complete, we moved on to the next phase. To publicize the issues surrounding Fiona's inn, we contacted a trusted local reporter, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson had covered Smithtown Clothiers before and had a deep understanding of our family and business. Mr. Thompson, we need your help with something. We want you to report on the unethical management practices of Mrs. Miller's inn, including the voices of the employees and business partners. As William explained the evidence he had gathered, Mr. Thompson's expression changed. This is certainly something we can't ignore. It's an issue that affects the reputation of the entire community. However, having additional corroborating information would make it even more impactful. In that case, I can provide you with contact information for the employees so you can conduct direct interviews. They are prepared to speak out. With this, Mr. Thompson began to take action, and it was decided that the wrongdoings related to Fiona's inn would be reported as local news. At the same time, we planned to utilize social media. If we use the power of social media, we can spread the information even wider. Let's make sure the posts accurately convey the facts. We should avoid emotional language and remain calm. The content William posted on social media was as follows. Information regarding the management issues of a local inn, harsh working conditions for employees, unpaid wage issues, and trouble with business partners. This is the reality of an inn that claims to be prestigious. We cannot overlook this any longer. Detailed information will be provided through the media in the coming days. The post quickly spread, becoming a hot topic among local residents and related parties. Comments such as, I heard that inn's reputation was going downhill lately, and I heard employees were quitting one after another and it was true, were posted. Fiona's inn became the center of attention overnight. Around that time, an unsettling atmosphere reached Fiona as well. She started receiving calls from business partners asking, is this true? Fiona tried to deny it, but she couldn't provide a clear explanation and was thrown into confusion. This will make Mrs. Miller and her family's position clear. It's just the beginning, but the real battle starts now. I nodded at his words, feeling that the path to give in the people who hurt Ashley, they're just desserts, was becoming clearer. As the media reports and social media posts about Fiona's Inn spread, her notoriety grew throughout the community. Inquiries from business partners poured in, many of which contained enough information to conclude that continuing contracts was no longer viable. William and I decided to directly contact our trusted business partners and urge them to terminate their contracts with Fiona's Inn. The first one we contacted was a long-established local food supplier. We're always grateful for your business. Actually, we have some important information we'd like to share regarding Mrs. Miller's Inn. When William explained the inn's unethical management practices and mistreatment of employees, the president of the food supplier let out a deep sigh. Honestly, we've been feeling uneasy about our dealings with them too. Their payments have been increasingly delayed lately. Under these circumstances, we have no choice but to reconsider our contract. William nodded at his words and continued to make similar appeals to other businesses. Gradually, more and more companies began to suspend their dealings with Fiona's Inn, pushing its operations into an even more precarious situation. Maybe now they'll finally be forced to face reality. Furthermore, William reached out to the local tourism association. He pointed out that while Fiona's Inn played an important role as part of the tourist area, its reputation could damage the image of the entire region. Ignoring this problem is not a viable option for the tourism association. We ask that you consider taking appropriate action as an association. The representative from the Tourism Association also recognized the problem and decided to temporarily suspend support for Fiona's Inn. As a result, Fiona's Inn became even more isolated, making it difficult to procure operating funds. Meanwhile, Fiona was at her wit's end, dealing with the consecutive contract terminations and inquiries from businesses. How did this happen? Who's spreading these lies? However, she didn't have any concrete measures to resolve the situation, and she simply kept calling her business partners, making excuses. The trust in Mrs. Miller's Inn is shattered. She will now have to bear the consequences of hurting Ashley. I nodded silently at William's words. I felt that our actions to prevent her from further insulting us were steadily producing results. Inquiries from business partners and suppliers flooded Fiona's Inn. The phone wouldn't stop ringing, and the content of the calls was all the same. Is what's being said on social media true? Are there unpaid wages to employees? Is there fraud? If this is true, we cannot continue doing business with you. Fiona answered in a panic. Please don't believe those rumors. It's just some malicious people spreading falsehoods. But her words lacked conviction and were far from persuasive. Fiona herself was beginning to realize the gravity of the situation. After hanging up the phone, the inn's front desk staff approached her. She reported with a troubled expression. Ma'am, we've had several cancellations for today, and this morning we received more complaint calls from guests. What? What on earth is going on? Fiona raised her voice, unable to conceal her anger, but taking it out on the staff in front of her wouldn't improve the situation. The staff member just sighed and retreated, unable to say anything. The inn's management was visibly deteriorating. Within just a few days of William and I taking action, the trust in Fiona's Inn had plummeted. Cancellations continued, and the remaining reservations gradually dwindled. Fiona was gradually being backed into a corner. Meanwhile, William's efforts were steadily progressing. He resumed contacting the major suppliers that Fiona's Inn depended on. The problems with Mrs. Miller's Inn are already widely known. Continuing to do business with them will negatively impact your company's reputation as well. Although the suppliers were cautious, they began to consider reviewing their contracts after hearing William's words. It's difficult for us to take on any more risk. We'll consider reducing our business with them. Without the support of the suppliers Fiona depended on, the inn's operation would become even more difficult. By now, she had no leeway in her management. This wasn't supposed to happen. Why is no one on my side? The cold words from the suppliers over the phone pierced her ears. If you lose trust, you understand how serious that is, don't you? Fiona couldn't respond to those words. She was now isolated. Even the employees started to leave, and the inn's collapse was imminent. As the inn's management was pushed to the brink of bankruptcy, Fiona came to see me directly, clinging to a last shred of hope. That day I was talking with Ashley at home when there was a soft knock on the door. When I opened the door, I saw Fiona standing there, looking utterly exhausted. Mrs. Smith, I beg you, please listen to what I have to say. Her once domineering presence was gone, and her voice was weak. I was momentarily taken aback, but maintained a dignified demeanor. What brings you here? Have you forgotten what you did to us? Fiona began to speak in a trembling voice. I'm truly sorry about what happened to Ashley. I was so focused on protecting my family's name that I lost sight of what was important. Please, can you resume our business dealings? Without it, the inn... I let out a deep sigh at her words. There was no trace of her former arrogance in Fiona's apology. only the desperation of someone cornered. Mrs. Miller, you still don't seem to understand the weight of your words. That's not true. I've truly reflected on my actions. I'll apologize to Ashley, too. I cut her off. What good is an apology to Ashley after you trampled on her life? You hurt my granddaughter and insulted our family. You will pay for that. Fiona was about to crumble, tears streaming down her face. I was wrong. I admit it. But I need to protect the inn. It's what my family built. There was a hint of passion in her voice, but it wasn't enough to move my heart. If it's so important, why didn't you treat it with more care? You didn't protect the trust of your family, employees, and business partners. Now you say you want to protect your family's name, but that's just a self-centered excuse. Fiona couldn't say anything and just hung her head. The emotion that welled up inside me was solely for the sake of protecting Ashley. This is the consequence of your actions. It's too self-serving to ask for our help now. Please leave. Fiona wiped her tears and left, leaving behind only a faint, I'm sorry. Her back was small, and the figure of the once powerful woman was nowhere to be seen. A few days after Fiona's inn fell into a financial crisis, William put the legal measures he had prepared into action. First, through their attorney, they initiated asset seizure proceedings based on the inn's unpaid debts and unfair labor practices. Mrs. Miller's inn has a history of unpaid wages to its employees. In addition, payments to suppliers are also overdue. They won't be able to legally escape this situation. The attorney reviewed the documents and nodded. We have sufficient evidence. Asset seizure is certainly warranted in this situation. Furthermore, if the employees file a lawsuit, even stricter sanctions may be imposed. I've already explained the situation to the employees. Some of them are considering using this opportunity to make their voices heard. That's good. It will make the court proceedings smoother. Thus, through William's actions, a formal seizure notice was delivered to Fiona's inn. The news shocked the inn's management. When the documents from the court arrived, Fiona turned pale. What is this? Asset seizure? This has to be a mistake. But with the inn's management records and employee testimonies, there was no room for dispute. Fiona desperately tried to contact banks and acquaintances, but the inn's credibility had already plummeted, and no one was willing to help her. On the other hand, a change was taking place among the inn's employees. People who had remained silent until now began to be interviewed by local media to expose their treatment and unpaid wages. We've been treated terribly for a long time. There are unpaid wages. Long working hours were the norm. Even so, we couldn't quit because we were worried about finding another job. Thanks to the Smith family's actions, we now have the courage to speak out. When their testimonies were reported, the local public opinion turned even more critical of Fiona, and criticism of the inn intensified. This will corner Mrs. Miller and her family completely. The court proceedings will move forward, and the inn will likely be sold off. I nodded at William's words. It was the consequence Fiona had brought upon herself and the price for insulting her family. Ultimately, the inn was subject to asset seizure, and the management rights were sold to a new owner. Even so, Fiona clung to a last hope, desperately trying to somehow continue managing the inn, but all paths were closed to her. This wasn't supposed to happen. Why is this happening to me? Her lamentations reached no one's heart. Completely cornered by legal means, Fiona's inn was destined to disappear from the local community. As Fiona's inn was being cornered, Jonathan gradually began to question his mother's actions. Back home, he read newspaper articles and saw the notoriety of the inn on social media. He sighed. Mom, was this really the right thing to do? Hurting Ashley and her family, and the result is this? Fiona bristled at Jonathan's words. What are you saying? We're in this mess because of that Smith woman. She's the one trying to bring us down. That's not true, Mom. This is because of the way you've been doing things. You ignored the voices of your business partners and employees and prioritized only your own pride. That's why no one is willing to help you now. Fiona tried to retort, but Jonathan's gaze was sharp as he looked at her. His eyes conveyed a strong will that wouldn't accept any further excuses. I can't follow your way of doing things anymore. I don't want to be dragged down any further. Fiona turned pale at his words. What are you saying? Are you going to abandon your own mother? I'm not abandoning you. I just want to get my life back. Jonathan left the house without another word. He went to the Smiths' house, intending to apologize to Ashley directly. Ashley, I'm so sorry this happened because I was weak. Ashley looked down, troubled at his words. I responded in a calm voice. Jonathan, what do you think will change by apologizing now? Do you understand how much you hurt Ashley? I do. That's why I at least wanted to apologize in person. If you truly mean that apology, then first, think about how you should live your life. What you need right now is not words, but actions. Jonathan couldn't say anything back to my words and just apologized. After that, I heard that Jonathan completely distanced himself from his mother and started living alone in a cheap apartment. He also quit his job and is apparently trying to find a new path, but repairing his relationships with his family and Ashley will be a long and arduous journey. Fiona felt a deep sense of loneliness after Jonathan left. Even Jonathan is leaving me. What am I supposed to do alone? But almost no one realized that Fiona's past arrogance had led to her own isolation. Fiona's Inn completely lost the trust of the community and was driven into a corner. Cancellations continued, now reservations dried up, and many employees quit. As Fiona walked down the hallway, she could hear the anxious voices of the remaining employees. There's no guarantee we'll get paid properly if we stay here any longer. It's time to go. We should look for another job. Wait, everyone, don't leave! Fiona raised her voice, but the employees didn't stop and walked away. Watching their backs, she realized her own solitude. The inn's operating funds were depleted, and the day when she would lose management rights due to asset seizure was imminent. Furthermore, unpaid bills from suppliers piled up, and Fiona could only hold her head in despair. How could everything I built collapse like this? The inn once called prestigious was a shadow of its former self, with the exterior neglected and falling into disrepair. With no guests visiting, the building was silent, and the inn was about to end its rule. One day, a court bailiff visited the inn and handed Fiona the final notice. Further attempts to keep the business afloat are impossible. It has been officially decided that management rights will be transferred to a third party. Fiona's hands trembled as she received the documents, and she couldn't utter a word. This was the reality, the consequence of her own actions, and she had no choice but to accept it. After losing the inn, Fiona was completely isolated from the local community. None of her former business partners or acquaintances offered her a helping hand. Even when people saw her eating alone at a small local diner, no one spoke to her. They simply pretended not to see. If I hadn't hurt Ashley like that, maybe none of this would have happened. A hint of regret was evident in her muttered words, but it was already too late. Fiona lost the inn, lost her family, and was forced to live a quiet life facing her mistakes. Fiona's inn officially went bankrupt and was sold to a third party. Afterward, the inn was restructured under new management and is showing signs of regaining its former reputation. However, Fiona herself was completely isolated. The reasons for her downfall were widely known in the community, and whenever her name came up in conversation, people would simply react coldly, saying it's only natural after how arrogantly she behaved. Fiona withdrew to a small, solitary apartment, rarely going out. Meanwhile, Jonathan was also living a lonely life. After leaving his mother, he started working at a small local factory and is searching for a new life, but the eyes of those around him are harsh. The fact that he hurt his fiancée and abetted his mother's actions was not easily forgotten. We, the Smith family, had no further involvement with Fiona or her son. However, with the inn issue resolved, the whole family began to regain peace in their lives. Ashley, now you can truly move forward. Yes, Grandma. Thank you so much. Ashley's expression was brighter than before, and she seemed to be looking for a new hope. She was working hard at her job and trying to carve out a new future for herself. Ashley told me she's made a reliable junior colleague at work, and she's teaching them various things. Ashley's face as she told me this was bright and forward-looking. The tearful face she showed on her wedding day was nowhere to be seen. William continued to support the clothing store's management and was pursuing new initiatives. Although there were concerns about the impact of suspending business with Fiona's Inn, they managed to acquire new clients thanks to not having lost the community's trust. Mom, I was introduced to a new client at the trade show the other day. They said they heard the Smithtown Clothiers is reliable. I couldn't help but smile at that report. It was a moment where the efforts to protect the Smith family's long history and trust were rewarded. One holiday, as the family gathered around the dinner table, Ashley suddenly said, Grandma, Uncle William, I think I can trust someone again. Both William and I were surprised, but also overjoyed at her words. That's the spirit, Ashley. We'll always be here for you. I thought to myself, speaking to Robert in my heart, our family will continue to live strong, bound by the ties you protected. The sight of the whole family smiling around the table was proof that we had overcome our difficulties. Ashley's future is sure to be bright, and we will continue to support her along that path. Several months had passed since the incident with Fiona's Inn. The Smith family had regained their peaceful days, and everyone was trying to enrich their own lives. Ashley, though deeply scarred by the events of the wedding, was gradually recovering. She was entrusted with a new project at work and was busy every day. Seeing Ashley's smiles increase, I could finally breathe a sigh of relief. The resolution of the issues with Fiona and her family brought a new chapter of happiness to the Smith household.